Hello and good morning, friends. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about access to a septic system. What should it look like? What do they look like? And I want to show you this really interesting one that I'm working with right now. So let's go ahead, take a look, see what's on the actual property, and let's talk about it. All right, so this particular house, what we're looking at is going to be our clean out. So it took a minute to find it, but we eventually found this little concrete plug, which is this guy right here, in that terracotta access point right there. This one's interesting because what they actually did was they built up a normal 24-inch manhole riser, but they slapped this on top. So when we look inside, we can actually see the inlet baffle, which is right there. You can see the riser, which is right there. And we got this little tiny clean out. Now, if they're going to do a riser, we usually recommend go ahead and bring it all the way up to the surface just to make things work a little bit more efficiently. So in our area, you're really only required to have access within 3 feet of the surface. So the reason why they installed that riser that way is that we can bring up the access to the tank to within a reasonable depth. The clean out is a little bit goofy. You only really see that on old homes from the 1950s and 1960s. This particular one's 1961, so it's to be expected that you're going to see some goofy stuff. And the reason I say it's goofy is by putting that little tiny clean out, you have a 5-inch hole on the top of the lid, right? The manhole riser, the purpose of it is so that way when you're pumping out the tank, you can actually manipulate the hose a lot more efficiently to get all of the junk out of the tank. By putting that little tiny lid on top of the lid to the riser, what you're doing is you're actually restricting the ability for the pumper to move the hose around. Restricting the movement of that hose is going to make it to where the pumper cannot do as an efficient job in pumping the tank. So usually whenever I see these sorts of things, I always recommend just go ahead, dig down a foot, add the extra ring so that we can get it up to the surface and use the riser as it's intended to be used. The other benefit of having the access at the surface is being able to find the stupid thing. Now, I've done a bunch of homes in this particular neighborhood, so I know where almost all of these houses are going to be basically the exact same. So I know that all the tanks are basically right off the back of the house, about 10 foot, and they're almost always covered by about 1 inch or 2 of dirt. This particular one, exact same thing. Except for, rather than being the lid on the tank like everybody else, this particular tank's about 6 foot down, and that's because they wanted a basement bathroom. They never finished that bathroom, but they wanted it, right? The main thing is as long as you can get into the tank, that's the most important part. Even if you're not efficiently pumping the tank like you ought to, just having the ability to get into it and maintain it is the biggest part, right? Generally, with these older systems, you'll almost always see some kind of like cast iron piping. The piping is going to be usually sticking up a couple inches out of the surface. Sometimes if you're in Western Maryland, they'll bury it just below the surface or flush to the surface. But most of your central Maryland counties, it'll stick up just enough to where you can see it, about maybe 8 inches to a foot. More modern systems, so systems between like the 1980s and maybe the 2010s, are usually going to have a 6-inch PVC clean out. Now, you're more likely to also see with that either a concrete or a plastic riser with that clean out. Those were the more common things, but the only county that was really requiring risers and clean outs on every single tank, even back in the 60s and 70s, would be Baltimore County. Baltimore County would be most likely to have everything that you would normally see nowadays. A very modern system, like in the last 10 or 15 years, will almost always be a 2-chamber tank with a manhole riser front and back. If you're on the back half of that time period, so like 15 years, you might see a riser in the front, 6-inch clean out in the back. Not as common, but you will see that every now and again. And the reason why you want to have the 2 chambers is to help clarify the liquid between the first and second chamber. The purpose of the manhole riser, like we've discussed a second ago, is to pump out the solids more effectively. The goal of the tank is to keep all the solids and debris in it, so that way you have a clearer liquid going to your absorption system. Well, no matter how well you take care of that system, a little bit of that biomat, biologic material, junk, debris, toilet paper, human waste, all that good stuff, is going to work its way out of the tank and into the absorption system. When that stuff gets out of the tank and into the absorption system, the problem is that it can bind up the soil in the absorption system itself, causing the absorption system to start to hold more liquid. The benefit of a 2-chamber tank is that that little bit of debris, no matter how well you take care of it, that little bit gets stuck in the second chamber, so then you get a little bit of the little bit that works its way out into the absorption system. Every system nowadays that you get installed, unless it's some kind of weird system set up where maybe they're able to keep the existing tank, you're going to get a 2-chamber tank. That's just the way it is in our area. You might even get a 3-chamber if you have some variation of a BAT system, but most commonly conventional, that's what you're going to see. Now, manhole risers, they come in a variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. My preferred version is going to be the plastic ones, and the reason why is for the ease of repair for both the homeowner or the contractor. You may be thinking, well, who cares if it's easier for the contractor? Well, you should, because the easier you make it for them, the cheaper your repair is going to get for you. So the plastic ones are nice because they're interchangeable, interlocked. The other type of plastic you'll see is that black corrugated pipe. I'm not a huge fan of working with that stuff, but it is still cheaper and a little bit easier to work with than concrete. Concrete's heavy. Concrete, usually you'll see either circular concrete or square concrete. I almost never see square concrete anywhere east of Frederick. Everything else out west, that's usually where I'll see the square ones. Those ones are a pain to work with because they're square, they're heavy, and they don't roll, right? You can kind of flop them over to get them to where you gotta go, but most of the time you're gonna need a machine to get that out. The circular ones, you can manually pick them up and roll them to your truck or to your trailer or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of the concrete just because most of the time when they're installed, they're not actually waterproofed correctly. So there's no sealant, there's nothing to prevent soil, groundwater, etc. getting into your system. As we've discussed previously, it's very important to make sure that you're only letting the designed flow get into your absorption system so that we can get a nice, long, healthy life out of your septic system. Excessive water from rainwater, or for example, let's just say you have a running toilet. Let's say the flapper has gone bad, and you just have water continually going into your tank and overflowing it into your drain field or dry well or whatever you have, you're going to shorten the lifespan of the system, and you're going to have a lot more problems because you'll flood it. And then guess what? When it's flooded, you got nowhere else for that water to go but back towards the tank or potentially up to the surface. But usually in our area, most of the time, it's going to back up towards the house. And that's kind of really about it. I just wanted to kind of touch base a little bit on access to septic tanks because I think that it's important to make sure that you're able to get into your system to maintain it properly. I know that they come in a variety of shapes, flavors, and colors, but it's important, right? If you don't have a riser on your septic system, you really, really ought to consider getting one installed. I get it. They don't look amazing on the surface, but that's okay, right? That's what gardens are for. You can mulch them. You can put some kind of plants. You can get a fake rock if you want, right? If you found this informative in any way, shape, or form, if you gained any value out of this, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I have more videos posted every day on the World of Well and Septic, and I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow.